So now we're using Excel to answer the question in the previous section. What percentage of students scored better than Patty on the exam? In this, we're going to use the norm dist function. The norm dist function has the following inputs. We have the value or the score of Patty's exam. We have the mean value or the mean of the distribution. We have the standard deviation. And then we have the distribution factor. So Patty scored a 62.5 on the exam. The average for the class was 50. Standard deviation was 12.5. And then we always use a continuous probability function. So the answer that we're going to receive is, what is the probability from negative infinity to x? It always goes from negative infinity to x. We use the function norm dist with the following inputs, and you can see those inputs here. X is the score or the value that we want to find. Mean is the middle or the mean of the distribution. Standard deviation for the distribution, and the cumulative value we could really leave blank. It will assume a continuous distribution, but we'll put in a 1 there. Now, there are some limits to using the norm dist function. The distribution must be normally distributed and it must be symmetric. Otherwise, the norm dist function is a rough approximation at best, if not completely wrong. The norm dist function can be used for any x value because what it does is it first standardizes or calculates a z-score, and then it looks at the normal z distribution table and calculates that probability from negative infinity to x. So when we hit enter, we find that 0.84 or 84% of the class in this case scored below Patty on the exam. If we want to know what is the probability or how many students scored better than Patty on the exam, well, the normal distribution from negative infinity to 62.5 is 84%. The area under the curve from negative infinity to positive infinity is always 1 or 100%. So the complement to the first probability is just 1 minus that probability. So if 84%, a little more than 84%, scored worse than Patty on this exam, 1 minus 0.84 tells us that about 15.8 or almost 16% scored better than Patty on the exam. Now you can see that it's not exactly 16% as we calculated previously from the approximation method, but it's pretty close. You've got to remember that approximation method is only an approximation, and it only shows these discrete values, where the norm dist function is a continuous function.